And we're going to talk about compassion. And one of the best verses I have when I think about compassion is when Jesus was looking over Jerusalem.
Yes.
It says that he looked on the crowds with compassion. And that word in Greek actually means that his stomach turned. Now, when you think about that, sometimes you might want to think, oh, he's looking at us because he can't stand us and his stomach's turning. That's not what that means. It means that he loves us so much and cares for us that whatever we experience or feel, he has compassion. His stomach turns when we suffer. And so I'm so glad that you're here to help us with that, because I think a lot of times we, like you're talking about with the kids, don't feel that from Jesus for whatever reason. So we're going to talk about that this morning.
Sure.
And we've been in this series here this year at River Life called You Have a Place Here. We're trying to help people find their place with Christ. And in the fall, we talked about looking for a place. And then in Advent, we talked about what happens when there is no place. And this morning is the beginning of our winter theme, which is finding a secure place. And the giveaway is the secure place is Jesus Christ. That's the secure place. So this morning, we're here talking about parenting. And I'd like to start off by, would you say that parenting children is an attempt to help children find their secure place? And why or why not?
Yes, absolutely. Honestly, I think that one of the most important parts of parenting, not all of it, but one of the big ones, is helping your kids find a secure place at home and finding a place to belong at home. And there's an author that some of you may have heard of. Her name is Brené Brown, and she has written a lot about vulnerability and shame and belonging. And so some of what I'm going to share right now is about that. And she talks about how we have this inborn need inside that's put in us by God, we're all born with it, to belong to something bigger than ourselves. And that need actually is what draws us to God and to each other. And so that need is so strong that we will do anything to get it met. And so when that need to belong is not met, we do all kinds of things to try to belong. The most common one for people is to try to fit in, to try to people please, to change ourselves so that we can be part of a group or be loved. And so it's very understandable. The problem is that trying to fit in and belong actually goes against belonging, a real sense of belonging. Because if you're trying to fit in or people please in order to belong, then you're not yourself anymore. You're that person who changed to be belonging, to belong. And so the only real way to belong is to present your real self, your authentic self, your imperfect self to others and have them actually love you and accept you the way that you are.
Yeah.
And so the beginning of that comes with our families. And I actually learned that lesson about fitting in and how actually that's a bad thing. When I was in junior high, I struggled with my weight my entire life. And I remember being in junior high and kind of sitting back, and I always observed people and how things worked. And I remember thinking, you know what? The girls who are popular are thin and they're blonde. And so I was in deep trouble at that point. And usually they're taller. And so I felt like, wow. And then I just remembered thinking, that just makes no sense. How could a person's worth and value be a function of their external self? Like even back then, it just made no sense to me. And I just remembered, that makes no sense. So if you change yourself to be part of this group and now they like you, then they're liking your changed self. They actually never did like you. And I just remember thinking, that's for the birds. And so I just found different friends that liked me for myself, flaws and all. And so that's so important in a family, to be loved and accepted and welcomed. A mess, flaws and all. Because all of us are a mess. Sometimes we let people know, most of the time we don't, but we are. And so for parents to be able to let their kids know, you belong. You don't have to make the perfect grades. You don't have to be the best at sports or at chess or looks or, whatever the thing is that you're pursuing, you belong here in our family. And it doesn't mean you accept bad behavior, it doesn't mean that you don't discipline, you absolutely do. But that doesn't change your worthiness, it doesn't change your value, and it doesn't change your place in the family.
Your first book you came out, I think it's your first book. Okay, your first book was Give Yourself a Break.
Yes.
And I like that title. I'm trying to remember that throughout the days, is Give Yourself a Break. And it's really about self-compassion. And then the second book is Give Your Kids a Break. Could you describe a little bit about what self-compassion is, and then what does it mean for us to parent with compassion for our kids?
Sure. So the way that I view self-compassion is, self-compassion is a perfect blend of grace and truth. And actually, amazingly enough, that's how Jesus is described in John 1, that he was a balance of grace and truth. And self-compassion just means when I make mistakes, kind of like with me in the bowl, right? When I make mistakes, I acknowledge it. I don't try to get out of it. I don't say it was somebody else's fault. I don't blame whatever. I say, you know what, I did this thing wrong. And the grace part is, I'm still a valuable person. I still have a lot to offer. I'm just a person who made a mistake. So it's honestly like treating yourself with kindness and compassion and grace like you would a friend who's struggling. You think about a friend who did whatever you did, and you think, oh my gosh, don't be so hard on yourself. Like, give yourself a break and see the big picture, see why this happened. And it doesn't mean it's okay, but it means there's reasons why things happen, and you can work on it, and you don't have to punish yourself. And so self-compassion is really that balance of grace and truth, and being a friend to yourself rather than an enemy, which most people are. And it's just because we don't know a different way. I mean, you can learn, but in general, most of us don't know how to treat ourselves with compassion and kindness.
Well, and this is a question that's not on our list.
No problem.
So we're gonna riff a bit. But do you think that Christians struggle with this just as long as everybody else? I mean, we know Jesus, we believe in Jesus, we follow Jesus. Do we struggle with being compassionate toward ourselves along with everybody else that doesn't have a faith?
Even more.
Even more.
Sadly. Yes.
Sadly, and why?
My opinion.
Yes.
But I think that it's actually from good intentions. I think that we want to be selfless and loving and giving to other people so much that in the process often of doing that, we don't care for ourselves. And that leaves us empty and resentful and not a lot to give, and then you feel guilty because you can't, and maybe you're wrong and you're not Christian and you're not loving, and it's just crazy. And the reason that it really doesn't make sense is that Jesus said, the great commandment was, to love the Lord your God with your whole heart, mind, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself, which greatly implies that we should in fact be loving ourselves. And if you don't love yourself and you think about that verse, okay, so I should love neighbors as I love myself. I guess I'll ignore them. I guess I'll say mean things to them. I guess I'll have no grace or compassion. Like, no. You're supposed to care for yourself and love yourself so that you have more to give to others, and so that you're taking care of the person that God gave you. I mean, He gives us life, He gives us personality, He gives us a body, He gives us a future, and He wants us to take care of what He's given us. And I think sometimes with Christians, and I don't think people mean to, but they are a good steward of everything else out there. And they was talking about being a good steward of your finances and about your possessions and your children and your family. And that's all good. That should all be on the list. But you rarely hear people talk about being a good steward of yourself. So I think it's from good intentions to be giving, but it completely backfires.
Yeah. I remember you saying the last time that was the reason why you wrote your first book, Give Yourself a Break, because as a Christian therapist, you were seeing so many people that had a faith but were really struggling in their relationships.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they often weren't able to love themselves and forgive themselves, and that had a big effect on their relationships. And what I noticed was as they were growing in counseling and working through issues and learning new skills, I would often say to them, maybe you could be compassionate with yourself about whatever happened, the negative. And every time, it was like people had memorized a script. Every time, hundreds of times, people said, I wouldn't know what to say. And I just realized that's when God really started poking me and saying, you need to write all this down, because I was doing self-compassionate and teaching everybody this, and they were doing really well in counseling, and the gains that they made would last, and so that's where I was like, and then I found out from research that there was lots of stuff written on self-compassion, but nothing from a Christian integration, which was horrifying to me.
Yeah.
And so that's why I wrote that first book.
Well, and I think that a lot of times you'll read through Scripture, and it's all the stuff about, we need to deny ourselves, pick up our cross, and follow Christ. And so, how do I deny myself and also be compassionate to myself at the same time? That's a tension, right?
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. I think you've already answered this one about why learning to be compassionate. You talk about learning. It's a learned thing to be compassionate with ourselves, and why is it so important? Do you want to say more about that?
Mm-hmm. So I would say just in general it's so important, kind of a little bit of what I said, but also I'll move into maybe the parenting point here, is that, as you saw, I was talking to kids about that kind of thing. And those kind of lessons, those kind of conversations are really great. However, they will not stick if your children see you not being compassionate with yourself. So if I, say all the right things and I'm really kind in the moment, I'm still apply discipline, but I'm gentle and kind. And then they watch me fall apart and yell at myself and be mean to myself when I drop my bowl or trip over something or whatever else I do. It won't go in. It'll be like, yeah, well, that's what Mom says, but that isn't, nobody actually does that. And so that's why, as for parenting, as we treat ourselves with kindness, compassion, forgiveness, they will start to do that too. So it's super important from a parenting standpoint or a grandparenting standpoint.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I don't want to forget to say it, so I'm going to say it. But any of you parents that, had children up here, like this afternoon, I would go home and say, what did you think about what she said? And start with the bowl, because they're going to forget. They won't forget that I dropped the bowl, right? And so, what do you think that she felt, and what did she say to herself instead? And then I would be bold and say to them, what do you say to yourself when you do something wrong? And don't jump all over them with what they say. You want them to share. So if they say, I tell myself I'm stupid, I tell myself I'm the worst kid in the world, don't jump all over and say, oh, no, you're not. Because you just want them to be able to talk. And so you just listen, you go, oh, you do? And then I would share personally, maybe what you say to yourself, I struggle with that too. And how about we as a family try to change that? How about we as a family don't put each other down, or we don't talk to ourselves negatively? When you help me to stop doing that, I'll help you. I would just, it just happened, right? So you could just open that up.
When you gave that illustration, I was cringing because I was thinking through how many times I've broken things and then my response. And I think that when I was playing through my kids when they were growing up, when they broke something, I think my reaction was to jump up and to make sure that they didn't step in the glass.
Sure.
And I just kind of reacted. And now I'm watching them older as they break things. They are reacting and saying, "Oh, they get it's a tense moment."
Sure.
And instead of saying it's okay, you know what I mean? And I think before I was not thinking through how I was even responding to the brokenness because I didn't want someone to get hurt, or the case may be. So I was kind of communicating that it's not okay to break the bowl. In a harmless way.
Right, very harmless.
Yeah, and now I'm looking back and go, wow, I wish I could do those years over again and say, it's just a bowl, you're not going to cut your foot, let's just leave it there for a while, But that's not my response. I want to respond immediately to it.
Yeah, but here's the thing. You can go back. You can go back to adult children.
Yes.
Or older children.
Yes.
And say, you know what, we had a speaker this morning and talk about what you talked about. And then just say, I really regret, I realize now my reaction was I didn't want you to cut your foot or hurt yourself. But that probably communicated that you were bad for doing it. It wasn't, I was scared.
Yeah.
You know, what you heard was scared.
Yeah.
And I, you know, so you can. It's never too late.
Well, thank you. We'll talk later. Maybe in a session.
Well,
but we'll talk. So why is it so important for our kids to know how we're compassionate to them, but how do we teach them to be compassionate with themselves? Why is that so important?
Yes, it is important on so many levels. So kids have an inborn tendency to be hard on themselves. And the reason is, I want to explain it. Again, I figured this out when our kids were like, our son is, we have 2 kids, our son is older. He was 2, and I remember just watching him going, oh wow. And it was just realizing that they have to learn everything new. Literally everything. When they're tiny, when they're older, now, every single thing they do is new. And I just realized that must be so hard every day to wake up and you have to learn this, and then you're at school and you finally, you know, figured out this math, and now you learn the next math, and you're not good at spelling, and, you know, you're bad at sports, and, you know, in other words, every single thing they're doing is new. Well, the only way you learn is trial and error. Lots and lots of errors. So kids are very vulnerable to being shaming themselves, treating themselves unkindly, thinking that they are bad because they do bad things, when the reality is they're good. They're a good kid who just did something wrong. And so they're just vulnerable because of the fact they're learning all the time. And I always thought, gosh, it'd be like going to a brand new job every day. Imagine going your first day of work every day. Like, oh, that'd be terrible. Where you know nothing and you feel insecure and you have no idea what's going on, but you're afraid to ask anybody because you look stupid, you know, that. And so that's the first thing. And then I think the second thing is that they have pressure coming at them from so many angles. From school, from friends, from social media, from lots of places. Pressure to conform, pressure to believe things they don't believe, pressure to be cool, pressure to fit in. And so they're just in these vulnerable places all the time where they can be very harsh with themselves. And so instead, what we need to do, it's kind of a new thing I've been thinking about. I want to do some articles on it, but instead of, you know, the movement in our society now, or in some places, not everywhere, is create safe places. Let's create safe places for people where they won't be hurt or they won't be offended. And it's like, that is like the worst thing, honestly, because you're going to keep like really young, immature people if that happens. What we need to do with self-compassion is create a safe place on the inside. Help them have a friend on the inside when things go wrong, that your whole well-being is not dependent on whether so-and-so accepted you or whether they say something mean, whether they believe something that you disagree with, or like your well-being, then you set your well-being in the hands of other people. And that is a very bad place to be. And so we want to help them create a safe place by being kind and compassionate and forgiving with themselves when they fail, or when people don't like them, because for the rest of their lives, people aren't going to like them for a variety of reasons. Like, it's a guarantee. And so we need to equip them not with rearranging their world so they're not hurt. That creates like, not children who aren't going to be able to live in an adult world, but to help them find a place inside where they can seek God, of course, ask for His help, but also be a friend of themselves. Like, it's life-changing. It's literally life-changing to walk around every day with a compassionate friend on the inside rather than somebody who's beating you up. It's a different world, actually.
I think all of us in here can understand that inner critic of beating ourselves up. That's me, that we have that voice even in our heads as adults. When you were at your book launching at Susan's house, we were there, and you presented very well, just like you are this morning, and you asked for questions. Did anybody have any questions? And mine was, why didn't you write this book sooner? because my kids are older, and you kind of made reference to it more, but can you talk a little bit more about that? The book that you read about parenting with compassion is not just for parents that have little ones, but for any parent that has maybe older children, even grandparents. Can you talk a little bit about that some more?
Sure. Could I say something first, and then
Yes,
I'll say that?
of course.
Okay. If I forget, you might have to ask me. So the reason I didn't write the book sooner, I'll always tell you that. So I would like to share with y'all what that second book's about, which is Give Your Kids a Break, parenting with compassion for you and your children. Just the idea that you can parent and be compassionate with yourselves as you parent, as well as teach your children to be compassionate with themselves. And I just go through lots and lots of parent advice and raising, child rearing and all that, but I interweave self-compassion through the whole thing. But how that book came to be, it wasn't at all intended to be written, because I'll tell you why. But because I have this very serious lung disease, and it's called pulmonary fibrosis, and it's actually a terminal lung disease. And I got it as a very rare side effect from chemotherapy and radiation for breast cancer. So this treatment that was supposed to save my life actually is going to take my life. And so I have been, you know, it's a very sobering thing. I've had it for, I guess, 3.5 years. And life expectancy is 3 to 5 years, so at least I'm already at the 3.5 point, which is good. But when you have that kind of a diagnosis, you know, you start thinking about lots of things, about how you're living your life and what you want to leave for your loved ones and what you want to not be undone. And so for me, the biggest heartache is not being able to have retirement the way we hoped with my husband, Dave, and then also not being able to have grandkids, the experience of being a grandmother. We have 2 children, one is married, one is not, but no grandkids yet. And so, so I just started praying and thinking, you know, what could I do for them? I won't be there most likely to be a grandmother and help them raise their children. So I just thought, you know what? I've been teaching parenting seminars for 20 years, and I'm going to gather them all up and I'm going to write a book for them. And I thought, and I want to integrate self-compassion with everything that I write about. And so I started working on it, and I was only going to do it for them. I mean, that was my whole purpose. But honestly, as I was writing it, I really liked it. I thought, this is a good book. And so, which sounds funny, but it's like, well, wait, would you write a book that's bad? I mean, hopefully you wouldn't, you know. And so I actually talked to them last Christmas and said, I wanted to surprise you with this, but I'd actually like to self-publish it so I could make it available to other people. And would that be okay? And they said yes. And so that's how the book came to be. Praise God, because I absolutely wouldn't have done it, because my time and energy is very limited and I get tired easily. I wouldn't have put 9 months into writing it, which is what it took, but I'm very, very happy with it. And so I originally wrote it for them and opened it up to other people, but also I was originally thinking it would be for parents of younger children. But the amazing thing is, because I won't say one thing, I have tons of examples in there of conversations you have with your kids, about what you say to yourself to be compassionate, about what you tell your kids to say to themselves to be compassionate. Because I understand that nobody knows how to do this, or not very many people. And the idea is that you can learn right along with your kids. And so, I've talked to a lot of people who read it who actually have older kids, or who grandparents, or who have grown kids. And many of them have said, you know, this book is helping me because in a couple of ways. One, it's never too late to respond differently, even if you have older kids. And all throughout the book, the theme is compassion. How you relate to yourself, how you relate to other people, including your children and other people, and with grace and with truth, of being able to say, man, I messed up, but God loves me and I can love myself, warts and all. So it's kind of a way of relating that goes across all ages of children. And I've actually had a few parents recently tell me their children are, 30, and reading it helped them be kind and compassionate to themselves about the parenting they've already done. But it's like it just helped them resolve some things that they were struggling with, and gives them a different way to relate to their adult children and and future grandchildren. So that was a blessing I didn't think about, but I mean, I thought people email me all the time and write to me, and so I get a lot of good feedback.
For me, I've been thinking this a lot. Our kids are 23, 21, 19, and 17. Did I get that right, Janine? That's right. So
check.
That's how they are. And I'm finding myself in this weird phase, and I'm sure that there's people in here that would say the same thing, as because they're launching or launched, now comes the time where I'm wondering, was I a good parent? You know what I mean? Like, that's the question I'm asking. Did I do right? Did I make all the right decisions? Did I teach everything I needed to teach? Or all that kind of stuff. And now, it's been really interesting, the voice of, you weren't a good parent, is so tempting to listen to, rather than say, I didn't know what I was doing, I did the best I could, and also, I'm still not over. You know, and so, I think just thinking about this with you after hearing your conversation with Susan, and then even this morning, I'm just like, gosh, it's so good to be reminded that perfection is not the goal.
Oh gosh, no.
Right? Is that right?
Please give that up. Because
okay.
that would be 100% failure. I mean, and it's not necessary and it's not expected. God doesn't expect that. Why would He expect something that's literally impossible? I mean, you can't do everything perfect. You don't know everything. And parents we can be so hard on ourselves, and we're supposed to know everything.
Yeah.
Like, you have a child who's struggling in a certain way. You know, how am I supposed to know about learning disabilities or mental illness or addiction or a kid who's been bullied? I mean, that doesn't mean you can't learn, but like, I'm no expert on all of that. And so, of course, we're going to make mistakes, but then hopefully we're able to learn and grow and help our kids along the way. Yeah. I mean, for them to see a parent who's struggling and admits it and then changes is way better than a parent who never makes a mistake. Well, there isn't one of those, but I mean, if you pretend not to. And so it's because it teaches them, oh, I can make mistakes. I can, apologize. I can restore a relationship. I can learn whatever it is I haven't learned. I can help them learn how to deal with failure and regret. Like, that's way more helpful than not making mistakes.
Yeah.
I mean, even with our kids, because of my shortened lifespan, I mean, they're probably getting sick of it now, but I'm always asking them, do you have any places inside, any events in your life that still hurt that we can talk through? Because I just think you're not going to be able to talk to me about things later. Like, is there something I could explain or listen to you and hear now? And there's been a couple of those, actually, that I've been able to talk through, and it's been not trying to like get myself out of it, but just to listen to whatever that hurt was, and listen, and then maybe explain where I was coming from. And it's actually helped a lot, because they assume, oh, you did this because of this, but they don't know the backstory. Because as a child, you're not going to tell them the 4 things you were worried about happening right then, and the other thing that was happening with grandma that you didn't tell them because they were too young to hear it. Like, they don't know that, and so when they think back on it, they think from a childhood explanation. So, I know this is going to sound so weird, but there's some real benefits to knowing you have a terminal illness because you take care of business. I mean, I know a lot of people that deny it, don't take care of business, but if you accept it and go with it, you can take care of things, which I would rather do than like suddenly dying from something and never getting to be able to do what I need to do with my children.
We're kind of running to the end of our time, but if you could just say one thing to stick in our minds before we leave here, what would it be about compassion for ourselves and our kids? I know that's a hard one.
No, it's okay. I want to really feel it. I think what I would say is that you are enough. You are enough. And you can love your imperfect self. God doesn't expect you to be more than you are. We can always grow and change, but you are enough, and you are precious, and you are valuable, and you are deserving of love and care and forgiveness. And of course you've made a million mistakes. Of course I have too. like 2 million. But that doesn't change your worth or your value. It's not the end of the story. There's always things we can do to try to redeem relationships or relationship with ourselves, relationship with God, that it's never too late. So I would say make 2018 the year of being kind and compassionate with yourself. Because you will have so much. You will, number one, it's wonderful for you, but you will be more open to God that way because you'll be able to hear Him. A lot of times we block out His love because we're so hard on ourselves we can't hear His love. So it will help your spiritual life. It will help all of your relationships. So I think that's what I would say.
Did you feel that?
Oh, good.
You're talking, I'm like, thank you so much for being here. I just to let you all know, Dave was a covenant pastor for how many years?
30.
30 years, a covenant pastor, and he also taught at Western Seminary where Kim taught as well, retired. And so I don't know why you're so kind and gracious and compassionate. Maybe because we need it the most. I don't know.
You all are wonderful.
So when I asked her to share with us 2 years ago, she said yes. And then, you know, I knew you were not feeling well and ill, and I didn't know if I could ask again. But I said, can you come and share with us again? And she did. So can we thank her for